Hello, friends. As I share my reflection with you for today, I'd like to start off by mentioning that there's a website which generates random quotes, and then people are asked to compare these quotes with my quotes. And a lot of people can't tell the difference between a random quote generator and my quotes, particularly if they're well educated, according to the authors. Some guy in Canada, some psychologist called Poppycock or something like that. Poppycock, Poppy something, Poppycorn maybe, or Poppycock. But he's making a living through what he calls Deepak Chopra's pseudo-profound bullshit. Check it out, the random quote generator with pseudo-profound bullshit. Okay, so that prompted me recently to write an article, which I think Poppycock or whoever he is will find even more interesting, because I said the brain. I just wrote this article, so it's out right now. It's called "Why Your Brain Isn't Experiencing Anything." Again, why your brain isn't experiencing anything. And what happened is I got a lot of flack again from a lot of interesting and well credentialed scientists. And the point I was making in this particular article was, and I'm not going to read the whole article since it's there online if you want to check it on LinkedIn, on Facebook, everywhere that I post. But what I said briefly, making the brain the source of mind is like making the colors on Rembrandt's palette the source of his genius. And there were many other arguments. So let me explain what I really meant. Okay, I really do mean that the brain doesn't think in the same way as the piano doesn't play music. A musician plays music, and even the musician who plays the music, the piano, will play according to his or her conditioning. Whether they're playing Mozart or Beethoven or rock music or whatever, is the conditioned mind. And the mind is conditioned socially, culturally, scientifically, religious, economic, and everyone, even me, not saying it that arrogantly, everyone speaks through their conditioned mind. Okay, and what the mind is to the brain, or what the brain is to the mind, has been a subject of debate for thousands of years. It's called the mind-body problem. I think it should be called the mind-body mystery or mind-brain mystery. And ultimately, everything is a mystery. Existence is a mystery. The fact that there's a universe is a mystery. If there is a universe, I don't believe it is. There is such a thing as an objective universe. The universe you and I experience is a human construct based on intersubjective interpretation of human experiences, which essentially are sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, sense perceptions, which in turn are the conditioned mind. And what we call brain and mind are complementary, coexisting activities of something which is much more deep, and that is consciousness. And that consciousness is differentiating into species-specific minds and their corresponding brains and their corresponding universes. So I'm about to say something more controversial, and I'd like your feedback and your input on this. And this is, right now the fashion is panpsychism and all kinds of things, consciousness fundamental in the universe, like gravity. I don't buy any of that, okay? And so what I'm going to say is really controversial right now. And that is, nothing is conscious other than consciousness. Human beings are not conscious. They are conditioned minds and brains, and the experiences of conditioned minds and brains, which are a tributary of consciousness, which at all times is infinite possibilities, infinite correlation, infinite self-regulation, infinite evolution, and infinite manifestation as experiences. And your brain is not having an experience. There's no experience in the brain. I've mentioned this many times. You put a knife through the brain, there's no pain. But the brain also doesn't have images. You're experiencing these colors, there are no colors in the brain. You're experiencing these sounds, there are no sounds in the brain. Just like if you're looking at this painting or this book, these are not the source of experience. They are the expression of experience. So too, the brain and the mind are complementary, subtle and gross expressions of the brain, depending on their conditioning. The conditioning goes back thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. So mythical conditioning, cultural conditioning, economic conditioning, religious conditioning, and now scientific conditioning. Is science a mythology? Yes, it's a very useful mythology. Science is a particular mythology based on a particular methodology, observation, without ever addressing who or what the observer is. Observation, which implies an observer. Science never discusses who or what the observer is, and an observed, and that's the focus of science. What we observe as human beings through this perceptual apparatus, which is both a microscope and a telescope, because it can see far, see little things, and now we can extend that through instruments so we can see really far and really deep inside. And what do we end up with when we see far and near with sophisticated instruments? We end up with what people refer to as nothingness or emptiness, or the infinite, incomprehensible field of possibilities, which we're calling consciousness. And only consciousness can be conscious. Human beings are not conscious. They are expressions of consciousness. Nor are other animals, nor are plants, nor is anything that we call a sentient being. It has sentience, but it is not conscious. Sentience means the ability to respond to the senses and experience through the senses and the motor activity that goes along with the senses. So mind and brain and universe are a particular tributary of pure consciousness expressing itself as that. And science is good for predicting the outcomes of experiments and creating technology, and not necessarily at pointing to the truth, because science doesn't address the scientist and the scientist's mind, which is an object of consciousness. So mind is an object of consciousness. Intellect is an object of consciousness. Emotions are objects of consciousness. Body is object of consciousness. The world is object of consciousness. And all these activities, mind, body, brain, and the world, are actually a unified process in consciousness as one particular stream of creativity and thinking. But the creativity is not of the mind. The creativity is not of the intellect. They are all objects of experience. How can we say that? Well, we frequently say, I changed my mind. So, by the way, I haven't yet heard anyone say, I changed my brain, which would be equally accurate. You change your mind, you change your brain. But the you that changes your mind and the brain is not the mind or the brain. And the only way to change the mind and the brain is to first recognize that you are assuming yourself as the body mind, as the subject of experience. No, you are the object of experience and as a body mind, and one amongst teeming trillions of objects of experience. So as long as you identify with the body mind, you're essentially screwed in terms of the bamboozlement of the physical body and universe, which are not physical entities anyway. They're perceptual activities in a conditioned mind. Okay, so today is the day to celebrate pseudo-profound bullshit as the only recognition of truth. And I say this with humor, but also with humility. So, because I'm the ultimate example of what mainstream science and a lot of mainstream, even philosophers, call the ultimate purveyor of pseudo profound bullshit, thanks to Mr. Poppycock or Poppycorn or whatever this guy's name is. I don't even know if it's a guy or a woman. Okay, so thanks for listening to me today. And I hope I haven't offended anyone. But if I have, then it's their issue. You know, who we get offended by and who we get flattered by is also part of our conditioned identity, which we call the ego.